Okay, so we will get started. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We will be talking about evolving your threat detection and response practice. That means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But what we'll focus on today is the Sophos SIXA EDR product, and we will also then talk about MTR, Managed Threat Response. I will provide a quick introduction and a few slides on how MTR and EDR fit within the program. And then I will kick it over to Steve Weber. He is a global MSP sales engineer that will go through the EDR product and show some screenshots and some really cool things that you can leverage. And then I'm excited to have Peter McKenzie. Peter is the incident response team leader for MTR. Very, very smart individual. I've actually been working with him quite a bit on several MSP cases recently, and I asked him to join us today because he has full knowledge of everything that's going on within the MSP space and how MSPs are being targeted. And so we'll address some of those insights today as well. So I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about MTR real quick. MTR was released middle of December. It's available in Sophos Central. You will need to accept a new set of terms and conditions for MTR and Cloud Optics. You can see the link there. We'll also paste that link in the chat window so that you can simply click on it in just a second. But the options for MTR for MSPs are four. You have the ability to simply resell it to an end user customer on a 1, 2, or 3 year term basis. You also have the ability to just simply get notified by Sophos if there's something that needs to be escalated or looked at, and we'll provide you instructions on resolution. You also have the ability to work with Sophos to collaborate and remediate. And then lastly, the number one up here is the ability for you to pre-authorize Sophos to go and provide a full response and remediation to your end user customer. So a lot of MSPs look at MTR Advanced, and they'll start out at, probably number 3. We'll collaborate together, and then once you feel comfortable, you go to full response mode and give Sophos the ability to simply go and do the remediation, which I think is a great strategy as well. A couple of prerequisites: Intercept X Advanced with EDR, or the SKU is SIXA EDR, is a prerequisite. You can look at EDR as kind of the recorder, and MTR is the analysis of that recording on what's happening within your customer's environment or within your own environment as well. And MTR has actually been added to the user license category. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the user license category. And if you're not familiar with the way that we do the MSP pricing, we have all of these products within Sophos Central, and they're all split up into 5 different categories. And those categories are user licenses, where you'll have Intercept X Advanced, you'll have mobile, you'll have disk encryption, you'll have email, you'll also now have EDR and MTR along with phish threat. The second category is server, so those are the server licenses. Third is wireless. The fourth is XG, or devices, if you will. And then the fifth category, which is a new category, is for Cloud Optics. So on the next slide, this is how we break it up. And so if you had 500 users, and each of those users, actually, if you had 400 users, and each of those users were using 3 different user licenses, for instance, if they were using MTR, they were using mobile security, and they were using encryption, that's 3 user licensed products times the 400 users, which would equal 1,200 user licenses. So the reason why we do it this way is to reward you as an MSP for upselling and cross-selling. The price that you have to your end user customer is going to remain the same, but the more you upsell and cross-sell to your customers, your price is going to lower, hence increasing your profitability. So I just wanted to do that quick introduction to set the stage. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Weber to talk a little bit more in detail about EDR.
Thanks, Scott. All right, everyone. We're going to get in and talk about the Intercept X with EDR and what this actually is about. So first, we need to define, kind of what is EDR looking for, and what do we mean when we're going after, that endpoint, data and response there. And what we're looking at is going to be the gap. What is going to be missed from just that? We know it's good, we know it's bad. What's kind of sitting in the middle in that gray area? So what this is going to do is give us an idea of what we're going to get from a traditional endpoint protection. If we talk traditional EDR, you've got quite a large gap inside of here. You'll have to have some sort of an analyst or SOC analyst going through and analyzing that data, understanding what data points are coming into this in order to make sense of all of that information. Because Sophos already has the best in breed protection as far as the endpoint and the server, we can take that gap and we can actually shrink that down. Utilizing both of those components, utilizing the data that comes from those, we can now spit out with that AI a much slimlined gap with the response on there that is needed for your particular customers. This gives you the insight into what is going on with that data and what traffic is happening on your network. So again, the whole point here is going to be increasing visibility inside of the networks and the detection, being able to see what blind spots, understand what's happening inside of the environment, also provide you a way to support investigation into, hey, we had an attack, we had a breach, or maybe I have some indicators of compromise that I'm looking for, and I want to do a threat hunt on those networks for my customers, and allows you to be that incident responder. Breaking all that information into nice, easily read graphs and charts and easily searchable components on there. That way you don't have to add headcount in order to build your own security SOC on there. The struggle with most EDR solutions is going to be that they are most of the times difficult to use. They are very complex, and again, they are going to require expertise, additional headcount in order to fully utilize those tools. They can provide limited value inside of there, and again, also very resource intensive as far as resources to your organization. And typically the result of what we see here is security teams tend to be overwhelmed. So MSPs, if you're not an MSSP, you don't have a SOC set up, you don't have anyone who can go in and spend all day looking at these security threats and understand everything that is coming in to those feeds, they can feel like they're getting buried in alerts and noise and they don't know where else to go. So utilizing that component from Sophos Central EDR can definitely assist. What this is going to do and how this is going to look like is we're going to have your base, your Sophos Central. This is the control for everything. This is where it all starts. You're going to have your Intercept X with EDR and your Intercept X server with EDR on it as well. All of those data points are then going to send information up to Sophos Central as we record incidents that are happening on the boxes, executables that are run on the boxes, such as PowerShell, Wireshark, any other program running on those systems. All that data is going to be sent up and correlated into Sophos Central, and then able to be searched on and presented to you based on the machine learning aspects on the back end, bubbling up certain threats that may need to be taken a look at. So easy way to think of this is as a data recorder. So I typically use an EDR, a DVR type scenario on there. We need to be recording that data. So if you had a show that came on TV and it came on today and your DVR service wasn't set up until tomorrow, we would not see what happened on that device. We need to have that EDR capability in place so that we have that data recording. We can see what's happened, and if that event has already passed, we can go back and take a look at it, the same as we would with a DVR. This allows you to go through and intelligently take a look at the components inside of those data streams, giving you insights into what's going on, humanized, prioritized, and actionable results inside of there. And this is what we would normally see inside of a a typical EDR type stream here. Again, the ability to explore, investigate, and hunt, which would typically be your SOC analysts, your incident responders on there, correlating all that data, specialists in these particular products. And what we'll do with the Intercept X, with that machine learning expert in a box in there, is bubble those data points up to the top and make that information available and accessible to your basic IT generalist inside of there. So again, our EDR starts with the strongest protection with Intercept X Advanced. It's going to then go to the EDR component. So we're adding expertise, not headcount, along with a guided response. And what we're talking about with a guided response, giving you some kind of a visual here, what we're looking at, this is a threat case inside of Sophos Central. So this is something that's happened in your environment. That top level here is going to be, what machine did this happen on? Where did this come into the network? So we can see it came from Outlook EXE in this thing. This bad thing happened and it was detected. Not only was it detected, it was blocked and cleaned. We can get a summary of what happened, and then we can also go in and view the details of where this actually came from. If we look at another case inside of here, we can see a little more complex here. Root cause being Microsoft Office. The beacon point here, the time in which we actually stopped this attack, was our confirmation EXE. This was clean, and you can see throughout this entire chart here at the bottom, we can see it came from Microsoft Office. We can see the URLs that were accessed, a memory compression, an exploit attack that happened in the environment. We can see that that Microsoft Office document opened PowerShell, not typical for a Microsoft Office document, and then downloaded and executed this confirmation EXE component on here. A lot of information very neatly laid out for you as you're going through and doing your investigation. We can also go through and take a look at that PowerShell component inside of here and get a little bit more information. Maybe we want to do a search throughout the environment and find out where else is PowerShell being run and what is it being used for inside of the environment. We can quickly and easily search for that admin tool. We can find out where it is being executed at on these systems, the two different systems here. We can then click on the view details, get the full command line arguments that were run against that system, the hash of that particular file, which is PowerShell, it's a known good, all the information you need. You can then decide to isolate that endpoint. We can now take that endpoint and put it off to the side in its own little box so it can't reach out to anyone else, can't get to the internet until any forensics are done at that particular point in time. We also have the ability through our searches to go ahead and add this to a clean and block list. If we found something inside of the environment, again, you found an indicator of compromise, something was bubbled up from our threat cases on there, our suspicious events, you can go ahead and clean and block those across the entire organization. You can also generate a threat case. So if we see something inside of here, we don't know where it came from, we can go ahead and ask Sophos to build us a threat case, understanding where this came from. That same similar diagram that we just saw, where did this come in, who touched it, where did it get downloaded from, and what did it do while it was on your system. So what we're looking to do, again, with the EDR product is be able to understand what's going on inside of your environments, the scope of the impact of those attacks, detect any particular attacks that may have gone unnoticed. Maybe somebody downloaded that confirmation EXE, but yet they didn't run it on the machine. It is now lying dormant. Being able to see that information, be able to record that data and go through and block that will drastically help reduce the attack surface on there. Again, searching for those indicators of compromise, prioritizing those events using our suspicious activity on there, and helping you understand and report confidently to your customers that they are secure. Now, what we're going to talk about next is going to take this up to the next level. EDR is giving you all of those tools. A lot of people, though, don't have time. Again, even with our tool sets on there, we make it as easy as possible. Your MSPs, you have a lot of different customers out there. You can't get into each one of those and maintain a high level of security across all of them. You can get all the information. You can have somebody go through and take a look at the diagrams when there's an incident. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a SOC team or a service from Sophos that could do that for you, that can take a look at those events for you? And for that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Peter.
Great, thank you, Steve. Just give me control. So yes, so my name is Peter McKenzie. I am the incident response team leader working in the managed threat response. In English, that generally just means if you're speaking to me, you're having a really bad day, okay? Now I deal with sort of the big attacks, the stuff that's been on the news, but obviously the managed threat response, the sort of 24/7 monitoring and dealing with threats, that's the main part we're covering today. Now, let's just see if I've got control. Yes, I do. So this is a slide that I am imagining it looks quite complicated to many of you. And that's because it is complicated. This is what's called an attack chain, or our sort of interpretation of an attack chain. The idea behind this slide is that it is showing you all the various components that the attacker has had to do to get their malware to run. Okay, now an attacker would love to just be able to put an exe on a machine and have it run and nobody interfere with it. But of course, companies like us, we make that very, very difficult. So these attack chains get incredibly complex as they try and get around the various different elements of security. And the idea here is that we're showing, here's the bits where the XG firewall can have its visibility, can have its impact. You know, it can interrupt these components of the attack and prevent it from succeeding. And then move on, we've got where Intercept X and EDR, it has greater visibility, it has more layers that it could potentially interrupt this attack. And then of course, we've got Sophos MTR as well, having even more visibility and more protection involved. Now, I'm gonna get onto a bit more about what MTR is later, but it is important to understand that sort of the difference between what we talk about when we talk about malware and hacking. These are two very different things. Malware is malicious software. So it's software that has been programmed, it has a purpose, it has procedures and routines it has to follow, and it's going to try and do something. If something interrupts that, it typically just stops. So in the case of malware, an attacker who has no real control over the attack. Maybe they've put a malicious document on an email and sent it out to 1 million different people. They don't know what's going on their machine. You know, they're just hoping it works on maybe 1%. Okay, any part of this attack that gets interrupted, the attack fails. The attacker doesn't know why potentially and can't really do much about it. Hacking is when you're actually dealing with a human. Someone that has potentially gained access to your network in some way, and now they are trying these different components of the attack manually, typing in commands, using a combination of malware, legitimate tools, so things like PowerShell, Microsoft PS exec, all of these kind of things that you already allow in your environment. The more things they can use that they know you allow, the better it is for them, because they've got a higher chance of not getting detected. But if they do get detected, because they are a human, they can try again in a different way. And they can keep trying again, getting further and further into their attack chain, unless, of course, someone kicks them off the network, someone realizing that there is something going on here and intervenes. Now, computers can only do this to a limited extent. They can see different parts of the attack chain. They can see that maybe PowerShell has just connected to the internet and has downloaded an executable and say, well, that is pretty suspicious behavior, we can block it. But just PowerShell being executed by itself, that's something you as a business, you know, want to allow to happen in most cases because you need it for some of your applications. So being able to understand, this is the gap we're talking about, being able to understand what is malicious, what is suspicious, and what is benign is very difficult in some cases. Humans are pretty good at identifying these type of things because they can sort of step back, they can look at the bigger picture, they can look at what's going on other machines, other events on this machine. You know, yes, there was a detection, but also 2 hours ago there was another suspicious detection. Are they related? You know, and humans are pretty good at sort of identifying these patterns and intervening. And the analogy that I was told the other day that I liked is, if you compare this to CCTV, okay, if you're securing your business with CCTV, you've got sort of one of two questions you're trying to answer here. Are you trying to prevent an attack or burglary from ever happening? Or are you just trying to record the evidence of what happened? Because if you're just looking to record the evidence, then you put up your cameras, you get burgled, and then you can go and review the footage and see what happened. But if you're trying to prevent the burglary, you have to have people monitoring those cameras. You have to have people understanding what they're looking at and taking action when they see something suspicious. Okay, that taking action and the monitoring, that is where the MTR side of things come in. Now, I didn't want to put this on screen without explaining what it actually is. So this is an attack called Lemon Duck. I don't know where these names come from, but Lemon Duck. The simplest way I've got describing it is everything in this box here is the attacker getting a file onto the machine and running it. All of those little bits there, that's just to get the file onto the machine and to have it run. Everything in the second box is, once it's on the machine, getting it to spread to other machines and then repeat the process on those machines. And then this little icon right in the middle, all by itself, that is the payload. That is the whole point of all of this. That's all they really wanted to do. They just wanted to have that running on the machine. That icon, the little M, it doesn't stand for malware, for anyone that was trying to guess. That is the Monero icon. Monero is a online cryptocurrency similar to Bitcoin. It's favored by attackers because it doesn't require sort of really high spec computers to run. So this is a coin miner. That is the whole point of this, to get this running on as many machines as possible and to make a few dollars for the attacker. Okay. Now, what we wanted to cover, because of the audience, we understand most of you are MSPs. So if you're not aware, you are the hot target at the moment. The attacks on MSPs has gone through the roof. I'm dealing with a couple right at the moment, okay? Attackers have spent the last few years doing what we class as sort of these targeted or high impact ransomware attacks, where they get into a network. This is them hacking in, so actual people getting in through RDP or something like that, and then manually scanning the network, working out where the servers are, compromising domain admin accounts, deleting backups, and then launching a ransomware attack, typically in the middle of the night when you're not paying attention. And they've been doing that for years, and they've been making, unfortunately, hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. I'm sure you've seen in the press about the Travelex attack that came, I think it was on New Year's Eve, they got attacked. So Travelex, a big company, hit by a very large ransomware attack at the moment, not a Sophos customer, just to point that out. And their ransom demand is $6 million. And apparently the attackers stole data. These are the kind of ransomware attacks that we've been dealing with for the last 2-3 years. But those same attackers have realized that the effort they go to compromise that kind of network is the same amount of effort they go to compromise an MSP's network. But once they get onto an MSP's network, you guys have remote management tools, ConnectWise or Kaseya or Bomgar, or you have these tools, even just RDP, where you can access your customers' networks. So compromising an MSP suddenly gives the attacker access to 10 other networks, 20, 100 other networks to encrypt. And that is what they are doing. So we're just going to cover that a little bit quickly so you understand the kind of risk you guys are in at the moment. So with all that in mind, I'm sure you're all just sitting there thinking, that's fine. We have the world's best security team, highly trained, stops everything suspicious, would never happen to us. We time our patching to the nanosecond. We are completely on top of it. You've all fixed those new Microsoft vulnerabilities today, the Citrix vulnerabilities, all sorted. Zero-day protection, the antivirus you've got is the world's best. It stops 100% of threats all the time, guaranteed, the salesperson promised you. And of course, you have superhuman staff that are so security conscious, they would never fall for a phishing email. In fact, the CIA come to you for training. Yeah? Maybe that isn't what you're thinking. Maybe you're going with weird backups. But do you? Because in these attacks, if we take this little graphic here, the one in the middle, MSP, that's you. You've got your office, you've got your servers, you've got your endpoints, and then you've got your remote management systems that give you access to your customers' networks. The attacker, as I said, they gain access to your network, and they may spend weeks or months. They've got time. They don't mind. They'll go away. They'll come back a few months later if something failed. You know, if they've still got access, they'll go and hit someone else, and then they'll come back to you later. And they'll wait until they've got their domain admin credentials. And then they will scope out your network. They will identify how you do your backups. And then without any malware, they will often just delete your backups. They will uninstall Veeam, they will reset snapshots, they will do whatever they need to do to wipe out your backups. Then they will launch the ransomware attack, not just on you, but on your customers as well. Now, over the last, well, 2013 is when ransomware really started getting big. The general response to a ransomware attack from the victim when asked, are they going to pay, was generally just swear words and a no. Well, that is not quite as easy. There is one thing in common with all these MSP attacks, and it's who is left with the blame. It's you, the MSP. As far as the customer is concerned, their data has been encrypted. They trusted you to have access to their network, and they know that the attack came from within your organization. So it's you they're on the phone to saying, when is my data being restored? The attackers know this, and we've seen them prove this already. I mean, if you think about these attackers, it just makes sense to do it this way. If you've spent the last few years attacking one company at a time and getting, you know, $50,000, $1 million, whatever it is as a ransom demand, you've suddenly now got access to 50 customers' networks. Well, how do you, what's the admin on that? Do you have to create 50 different executables to push out to each different victim so you can track who has paid, who hasn't paid? Do you have to have 50 different conversations with annoyed customers that just want to swear at you? Now, actually, what you can do is what they did, for example, to an MSP in Spain about 2 months ago now. So it was an MSP called Everis. And they basically woke up one morning to find that their network and their customers had all been encrypted. And everyone knew it was their fault, because on every single encrypted file on all of their customers and their own machines, the extension of the encrypted files was .everis. So everyone immediately knew who to blame. And that means the attackers know, because you're basically forced to pay the ransom, they can charge much, much higher amounts. And the stuff you hear in the press is tip of the iceberg. Okay, there have been much higher ransom demands than what Travelex has got this at the moment with 6 million. So, managed threat response. Okay, what we do. Okay, so first of all, the key thing here is, while there is a product element to it, really this is a service. This is people, expertise you are getting from this. Okay, now Scott briefly covered some of the different sort of the offerings earlier, the service levels. So we're going to get a bit more detail on that. I'm not going to go and just read everything off these slides. I'm just going to concentrate on the key parts. So standard and advanced, they're the two service levels for MTR. So the standard service, you get your 24/7 monitoring. So that means everything that's happening on your machines, not just the detections that Sophos is seeing, but all these other potentially suspicious events. It could be someone going into command prompt and typing in ipconfig or who am I. It could be failed logon attempts or new user accounts being created. It could be suspicious PowerShell or dodgy looking exes, data being copied to external drives. You know, this kind of stuff is the stuff that's just coming up to our MTR console that we have at our end on a constant basis. Okay, now that information is what is called a lead, and we do lead-driven threat hunting and threat investigation. So if we see something, our team are going to start investigating it, and if it's determined to be malicious, we can take actions to stop it. We can contact the customer. We can work with them to investigate it, and ultimately determine what needs to happen next. So that's the core part of MTR. This 24/7 lead-driven threat hunting. And then we also do things like health check, make sure you're not making any silly mistakes, and as well as a few other bits there. But then the advanced offering is where you get all of the standard stuff, but you also get leadless threat hunting. That is when we're not going by the stuff that has come up to us. That is when we are just looking at your console, looking at everything we're seeing, and looking at everything that's maybe happening in the world, you know, with vulnerabilities and stuff, and we just start looking, basically, and we try and find anything that hasn't been identified as a possible threat, and we investigate it. So we're not just relying on technology here, we're relying on the expertise of the SOC team, the MTR, or the MTR operations team, they're called, okay, the threat hunters. Now, in addition to that leadless threat hunting, you do have a direct call into the MTR team. So if you have a security incident, or if you have a question about, you know, some new vulnerability or just some alert or event on your machines, you can straight call up the MTR team and speak to them, and that is also backed up by our 24/7 technical support teams as well. But you can get straight on the phone with an MTR person. The other things on here, all very important, but one of the things I wanted to highlight was asset discovery. So this is the identification of unprotected machines in your environment. I have been doing incident response for a very long time, and one of the most common questions is, you know, what did Sophos miss? You know, what did whatever vendor it is, what did they miss that allowed the attack to happen? And the reality is, it's not generally, I'm not going to say everything, you know, we can stop 100% of threats, but generally, what attackers concentrate on is unprotected machines, unpatched machines, anything like that. They don't want to make their lives difficult. If you've got unprotected machines in your environment, they're going to use those as their base of operations. They're going to sit there, they're going to do everything they need to do, they're going to get ready, they're going to test their attack completely without you knowing. And then they're going to launch on the rest of your network. And unprotected machines is always in the top 3 of the root causes of pretty much every incident I investigate. So discovering those machines, and every network has them, and getting them protected is really vital. Now, Scott also touched on these earlier, the different levels of response that we have. So notify, collaborate, and authorize. So notify is maybe you do have your own security team, and you just want us there looking over your shoulder, spotting anything that maybe you miss, or just, you know, confirming your own findings, so we can just let you know what we found. Collaborate is when not only is it about us having the ability to take actions, but it's just more, we're working with you on a more, you know, one-to-one basis. We're doing conference calls, we're doing emails, and we're actually working with you to investigate a threat rather than just telling you, hey, something happened, go have a look. Okay, but then in addition to that, yes, we have the ability to take action with prior consent from you. So for example, we can kill processes, we can delete files, we can shut down machines, we can isolate machines, we can alert admins, we can do all these very fancy things. We can get command line access to the machines. You know, this is very powerful stuff that can help prevent an attack if we spot something that's happening. And the last thing you want to do is come in the morning and find a week later, when you've restored your email server, that we sent you an email saying, hey, you're about to be attacked. So that ability to take action with your prior approval yeah, is very handy. And sorry, and I've just realized that the prior approval part is the in the authorized section where you do give us prior approval. However, there is an element of that in Collaborate. So Collaborate, you can additionally tick a box. These settings are in the Sophos Central Console, so you can go and change them whenever you want. They're available to advanced and standard. So Collaborate, you can tick a sub little box that says, if I can't be contacted, you know, if we're saying, we know there's an attack about to happen and it's the middle of the night, you're asleep, you can tick this little box saying, in those circumstances, we approve that you can take action. But then the authorize is when you've said, doesn't matter if you can contact us or not, if you think there's something going on, we give you permission to stop it. Okay. Now, as I said, there is a product element behind this. It's generally not something you will see. It is something that gets deployed to the machines that gives us all this data. Everyone wants to see what it looks like, so I have included this one slide, okay? But the reason why I don't want to concentrate on the stuff we have at our end is because it's just a tool. It's one of many we use. It's constantly being changed. It is not the thing you're necessarily purchasing. You're purchasing what the people are doing with this tool. Okay, but this is a typical lead-driven event that happened. This is a real customer, which is why I blocked out the user and machine. But basically, this was a suspicious PowerShell command that was reported on this user's machine. You can see command prompt opened up this exe, and then a bit of PowerShell was run. We can actually see, I put it into a slightly more visible format, but this is the encoded PowerShell. Now, of course, most people wouldn't know what to do with that. In reality, it's actually fairly simple to decode this and see what it is. But at this point, if you're looking at this, you have no idea if this is good or bad or what's going on. Do you need to be sounding the alarm or not? That's why experienced security team can help you understand that actually, in this case, it was the customer's admin testing if we really could see what he was doing. And the answer was yes, we could see. And we contacted them because we had to, because for all we knew, this was an attacker taunting us. So yes, we did investigate it, and we did let the admin politely know that he probably should be getting on with his work. But yes, these are the kind of things that we have the visibility of and can investigate. Now, also, a big part of MTR is that we're not just going to be bombarding you with even more alerts and more work to do. So most of the stuff we investigate, we do without involving you. You know, if we can happily investigate an event and determine that it's not malicious or it's been dealt with, you know, we don't necessarily need to contact you. It just goes into your monthly report. This is an example of one of those type of reports showing your overall security level, the type of detect, or the volume of detections, how many cases we've created, how many we've escalated to, and of course, if you've had a major instance, which you would obviously know about anyway. But this is just the typical type of report you might see. And I believe I have gone through this much faster than I was expecting. So we're going to have lots of time for questions as well, but I'll also give a few more stories of the type of things we've done. But I will just cover the recommendations we have for you as an MSP if you are worried about these type of attacks. I don't want to leave you with nothing in that sense. So two-factor authentication everywhere. That is really just a given nowadays. We have dealt with MSPs where they use software that has like an externally available login page, and attackers have brute forced their way in, and then they've used that to attack their customers. So please enable two-factor authentication, not just on your remote management system, but on everything you can really, just you log into your network, okay? Subject yourself and your software to security audits. Now, as I said, your customers are going to begin to realize, if they're not already, that they don't only have to worry about the security of their network, but they have to worry about the security of your network, because you're the one they've given permission to access their network. So they're going to start asking you more and more questions about what you're doing to ensure they are safe from you. So that means security audits on your network. It means potentially deploying Sophos MTR to your own corporate network as well, which is obviously a great advert to then sell it to your customers. But also it means speaking to the vendors that are making the software you're using. I mean, if they don't offer you a 2FA option, then that is a very questionable decision to use that software. Role-based administration. Now, it may be very easy and convenient for your support staff, whoever is doing this kind of remote management work. It may be great for them to have access to all of your customers all of the time, but clearly it is not great from a security perspective. This goes without saying for pretty much every scenario involving attacks at the moment. Don't expose RDP to the external internet. If you are, you've got to put a VPN in front of it. You've got to put two-factor. Attackers get into RDP unbelievably easy nowadays, and it is one of the most, if not the most common method we are seeing for these type of attacks and how they start. Okay, so please secure RDP. If you aren't aware, there's some great websites out there. One's called Shodan.io, so it's I've forgotten how it's spelled. SHODAN.io. That is basically Google for bad guys. You can put IP addresses in there. You can put in very elaborate search filters, and basically Shodan crawls the internet, finding everything that's online and listing every vulnerability, every open port, everything about it that an attacker would like to know. They even, when they identify machines with open RDP ports, they even take a screenshot of the login page so they can capture the last username that was logged in. It is a very powerful tool for attackers, but of course you can use it for your own networks and your customers to identify what information they are leaking out into the world. So I'd highly recommend that, and there's a few others out there as well. I'm sure you can Google them. Now, this is, of course, use the latest synchronized security solutions. So as we covered earlier, security is about defense in depth, layers of security. It's a very simple concept, and it goes back thousands and thousands of years. If I asked you to build me a castle and you go away and build a wall, I'm going to be pretty annoyed because someone's just going to shoot arrows over the top of it or whatever. You know, there is a layer of defense for every type of threat. If you're missing a certain layer, then you are vulnerable to that type of threat. Employer security team, a SOC or Security Operations Center, that are looking at your CCTV cameras. As my analogy goes earlier, you know, you want to prevent an attack, you have to have the means to do that. And if you don't, then look at an MTR service. Also, prepare an incident response plan. These type of attacks are a when or if type of scenario, and at the very least, your customers may expect you to have these type of plans and may ask about them as well. Think of it as preparing for a fire or a flood in your data center. It's that kind of scenario you'd be dealing with. That is not my bullet point. Someone added that on there. Scott or Steve? Yes. Use, as I covered earlier, use Sophos MTR to actually protect your own networks as well. You slipped that in. Well done. And then, of course, get proper backups offline and offsite. Offline being the absolute key word there. We have seen on so many occasions attackers get access to the backups and just wipe them out before an attack. If you're sitting there listening to me thinking, I'm the only person that can access our backups, then you better hope it is not your account that gets compromised. Okay. Now, because, well, actually, I'm pretty much dead on for 15 minutes of questions. So, I mean, if you want to start asking your questions, in the option. Do we have any? I don't know if we do, but
yeah, Peter. Before you jump off of this slide, I was in fact the one that inserted use of MTR internally with discounted NFR. All MSPs have two options. You can either set yourself up as a flex customer, or you can purchase a term license to use MTR internally. But I wanted to kind of pause you because this whole MSP being targeted really hit home with me. I mean, we read about it in the news and we look at it, you know, at a high level, and, you know, a lot of MSPs that I talk to have that same, you know, SMB mentality that it's not going to happen to me. And hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully you have two-factor authentication everywhere. But Peter recently looped me into a an MSP that was in the process of migrating over to Sophos and was using 2 other technologies. And I won't name names, I won't name vendors, but they were hit with a ransomware attack on the machines that were not using Sophos. And it was very interesting to me because the stuff that Peter and his team are doing it's just amazing to me. And a lot of times an MSP's network will be previously hacked, and then they just get access through a saved password in Chrome or the browser, and then get hacked that way. And the one that we were working on together, it was more of a brute force attack where they guessed the password over an extended period of time, because we saw a lot of audit logs from the vendor's tool. And when Peter and I were preparing for a call, he kind of gave me an overview, and I would love for you, Peter, maybe to I can run through it at a high level, but add some additional color, because when you were talking about identifying the IP address, which was Russian, and it IP2 location showed that it was in St. Petersburg, and then the scripter or the hacker actually uploaded 3 scripts, and in order to upload those scripts, they needed to download a client that connected to this hosted RMM, and they downloaded the client in a different part of Russia, just north of Poland. And when we looked at the scripts, Peter was telling me the 3 scripts. One was named tested plugins. The second was 1488, the number. And if you look at that online, it's a lot of negative connotation around neo-Nazi references. And then the third was a Russian word that translated to something very bad in English. And this was all part of Rebel, and it used the reflect injection technique. So maybe, at a very high level, without naming names, maybe just kind of fill in some blanks, because I think that when you get down to the grassroots of exactly what happened and exactly what you were able to see just through the cooperation of the MSP, it was just eye-opening to me personally that, hey, this could happen to any MSP out there, regardless of how security conscious you are, if you are not taking the recommendations that you put up here on the screen.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So, this is still an active investigation, and on the off chance the attacker is listening, I'm not going to give out too much information. But yes, we were contacted by an MSP. They were first alerted to the issue when their admin realized that someone else was moving his mouse. And they actually, the mouse started moving down to the taskbar and opened up the Sophos application and was trying to stop it, which they did fail. But the MSP, the admin, quickly realized that the attacker was in their remote management system, that they were not only used to manage their customers, but their own machines. He then started getting phone calls, because that was actually the second part of the attack. The attacker had already deployed at about 6 in the morning local time these scripts, which was basically a PowerShell command that was run on roughly 200 machines. And the PowerShell connected up to the website Pastebin and basically downloaded a load of script off that, loaded it into memory, and that was the ransomware. So there was no actual files written to disk on these machines. This is what we class as a fileless attack. So it's all in memory. So PowerShell running on the victim's machines, executing a command pushed out by the remote management system that's pulling it off Pastebin, a website that you're very unlikely to be blocking, and then starting to encrypt data on those machines. Now, I can happily report that yes, well, not happily report, but the ransomware was Revel. That's R-E-V-E-I-L. It's also got another name that I can't pronounce called Sodzeniki, something or like that. It's in the press. It's the one that hit Travelex, in fact. So it's a very well-known ransomware. The MSP did confirm that on the Sophos protected machines, we did very easily stop it. In fact, however, they had some unprotected machines. They had some other vendors that weren't so lucky. Now, as part of the investigation, we're working with that MSP, not only to secure their environment, but also looking at their customers that were impacted. Because the key question for us there is, how did the attacker get into that remote management software? Was the MSP's network compromised in advance, which is what we commonly see. We see their networks getting compromised, the attacker maybe using RDP, locating the admin's machine, and often just starting up the browser, going to the login page, and the admin has saved the credentials, so they just hit login. Now, this MSP did acknowledge that they didn't have two-factor enabled on the software. So we were very concerned that, yes, maybe their network was compromised as well. If it wasn't, then the attack would center on they just gained access to the remote management system. At the moment, that is what it is looking as happened. There seems to have been no breach of their network other than what was pushed out via the remote management. So that is why we're working with the vendor of the remote management software to understand exactly what happened. And it looks like it was a brute force attempt where they did just repeatedly try passwords until they eventually got in. And then they pushed out these scripts. And as Scott was saying, it looks like the attacker may have made a few mistakes that could help us identify their true location. We know there's an IP address in part of Russia, but it does look like they did part of the attack on a separate machine, and we're hoping that separate machine may give us a few more details about their location. I mean, I'd love a name and address, but I think that's probably a little unlikely. But yeah, so these are the type of investigations we're doing. We also, I mean, obviously, the goal is to not have these attacks. So we're also involved in instances where we see something advanced happening. There is some indication that there is an attacker on a network, and we intervene. And we know already that we've helped prevent some very large ransomware attacks that previously would have almost certainly succeeded. So those are the actual things that we really like to see, where we can intervene and stop them. I know I personally prevented a casino in the US from getting sort of wiped out a few weeks ago, and I was quite pleased about that. But anyway, we've got a few questions coming in.
Yeah, I'll take the first question. I think that's more for Steve, around detailed or deep logging that can basically be exposed or consumed perhaps by a third-party application. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the SIM API and some of the other stuff that we're doing from a logging and a data standpoint.
Sure. Yeah. So from a logging standpoint, when we are talking the EDR components, we do not have any way for that EDR data to be exported and dropped into any sort of external tools, at least not at this point. So what we do have today is from the Customer Central Admin Dashboard, you have the ability to set up a SIM API. This is going to allow you to get all of the event data that's happening inside of that customer's environment, and allow you to then take that into whatever SIM product you're using to correlate and analyze that data. Again, it is just going to be the event data, so these are going to be anything and everything that's happening inside of Sophos Central as far as generating events. Malware was found, ransomware was found, somebody added a new device, updates are needed. Anything you can think of that you would normally see alerted on inside of our dashboard would be available there. It's just not going to go in depth and provide you with all of the EXEs and information that we've pulled in from the EDR component that's not being alerted on.
There is an MTR question. Does the MTR team assist in creating an incident response plan?
We're not going to go out of our, we're not basically, what you're asking there is what you'd sort of hire an external security consultant to come in and work with you to do. Now, we are certainly going to answer questions. We're certainly going to point you to, I mean, there's absolutely loads of great resources out there that have pretty much done most of the work for you. So we will help you in that sense, but we're not going to actually write the document for you.
And we don't have any other questions. So I want to thank everybody for their time today. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please just reach out to us and let us know. You have the East MSP, Central MSP, and West MSP at sophos.com. And you should all know the team, Travis, Eric, Matt, Karen, Pete, Nahal, Kat, and Chris as well in North America. So with that said, thank you everybody for your time, and we will talk very soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.